28 years ago, a 17-year-old girl was thrown away like she was just trash behind a building. And to this day, they are still trying to figure out who did it. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Deanna Cremin. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, of course, hello, my name is Mike. If you're new to the channel, I tell 3 true crime stories a week over here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok, where I'm a little more well known, have about 3 million followers over there. But if you're into that kind of thing, please subscribe and give this video a like. Please follow me over on TikTok, like I said. Also, I sell merch. We ship all over the entire world. That can be found in the link tree below in the description of this video, which is where you can also find the TikTok link and my other links. And then if there's a case you want me to cover, just email me. My email is also listed below. Just email me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add it to my list. I pick my cases at random. I literally close my eyes, scroll the list, and I choose a name, and that's how I pick them. So it could be a while before I get to yours. There's like 5,400 names on that list. So anyway, let's get into today's case. Deanna Jean Cremin was born on March 26, 1978 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. At the time of this case, she's living in Somerville, Massachusetts with her mom and her stepdad, and she has 3 brothers and 2 sisters. So it's a pretty big family. Deanna's mom said that, Deanna first started walking when she was only 9 months old, and she said it was because she thinks she wanted to keep up with her big sister, Christine. Christine described her, Deanna, as like her little shadow. Deanna followed Christine everywhere she went, and she just tagged along all the time. She would always, wear Christine's clothes, and she loved her big sister. She loved all of her siblings. And Deanna, who was, I believe, older than her brothers, she was always a very protective big sister. She always made sure that they were okay, and she would always be like hugging them and just making sure they were loved. She was described as like this little scrapper, like she's like ready to fight, even though like at a young age, like you mess with my brothers, you mess with my sister, we're fighting. By the time she was, older in her teenage years, she would also become like the neighborhood babysitter. She loved being around kids. She loved helping kids, teaching kids, babysitting. She was attending Somerville High School, and she was actually attending the child development program there because ultimately that's what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to take care of kids. Whether that be, medically speaking, or preferably, I think, teaching them. I think she wanted to end up being like a, kindergarten teacher, nursery teacher, that kind of thing. When Deanna's, grandma got like Alzheimer's, Deanna was basically her caretaker. She was just this type of person who wanted to always be helping people. She also did that by making people laugh. She was funny. She was very endearing, and she could always tell a joke or just make someone smile when they were feeling upset. She was also, a teenager, and she, got into some trouble from time to time. She wasn't one to go looking for trouble, but she also wasn't one to shy away from it. She had been caught like sneaking cigarettes, drinking beer. She got detentions. She skipped school. She was a teenager. She loved going to slumber parties. She loved going to the pool and swimming all summer long. Deanna just had this full of life energy to her, and she was someone who was absolutely going to do something with her life, whether that be, taking care of kids or the elderly or something. She was going to do something to help the community. But her life that was on the path to a very bright future would be cut short by a stranger, or perhaps by someone she knew. It was March 29th, 1995. That's the day I turned 10 years old. Kind of strange when you put that into your mind, right? You think about that kind of thing, like when you were celebrating your birthday, this other horrible thing was happening. Deanna was with her boyfriend, Tommy LeBlanc. That evening, she was over at Tommy's house hanging out, something she did all the time. She had a curfew. She was supposed to be home by 10 p.m. And, she always makes sure she would call her mom if she was ever going to be a little bit late. And so when 10 o'clock came and went that night, Deanna didn't come home. Her mom waited just a little bit longer and okay, she's still not here. She hasn't called. Something strange. Deanna's birthday was just, a week or so prior, and her mom had actually bought her a pager. Remember pagers? Those crazy old things? And so when Deanna didn't come home that night, her mom sent her a page, basically saying, you need to call. But then midnight came, and she hadn't received any calls whatsoever. And I think her mom basically just kind of assumed she must have fallen asleep at Tommy's house. That's not exactly uncommon. I guess it has happened before with her. But when the morning came and Deanna still wasn't home, that's when her mom called Tommy's house and said, "Hey, where's Deanna? Wake her up. Is she there? She needs to come home." Tommy says, "Well, actually, she isn't here. She left last night." As a matter of fact, Tommy says he walked her halfway to Deanna's home. Deanna's mom thought that was kind of strange because usually, or almost always, Tommy would walk Deanna all the way home, especially that late at night. So it was weird that he said he only walked her halfway. Deanna's mom would say that Tommy at times could be a little obsessive with Deanna, a little possessive over her. And I guess recently, Deanna had mentioned to her mom that, "Hey, I'm thinking about maybe breaking up with him." And so, typically when you have situations like this come up, the boyfriend or the significant other tends to be your first suspect, especially since admittedly Tommy was probably the last person to see her. So her mom had to go to work that morning, and so she told her husband Michael, "Hey, can you track her down at school?" And so Deanna's stepdad called the school and basically found out that Deanna didn't go to school that morning either. The answer to where Deanna was, sadly, would come very, very soon. Literally just a couple of hours later. At 8 o'clock in the morning, two young kids, and it always seems to be kids who find this type of thing. But more sad is that these two kids were actually two kids that Deanna babysat a lot. But they were walking when they made just a horrific discovery. About a block away from Deanna's home, there was a senior center, center building, and a body was found behind that building, just sort of tossed like it was trash. And the body was partially clothed, and she was lying face up behind or under a tree. And the body would be confirmed to be that of 17-year-old Deanna Cremin. So Deanna's dad was notified quickly, who then notified the mom. The mom got home as soon as she could, and they would find out that Deanna was sexually assaulted and she was strangled to death. So the first person that police obviously are going to look at is Tommy LeBlanc, the boyfriend. The behavior of why he only walked her halfway home that night as opposed to all the way home. Because typically he would walk her home, wait outside until she got in the house, and then he would go home. And then he would call, when he got home, he would call Deanna just to say that he got home okay. But that didn't happen either. So through interviewing friends and whatnot, I guess they would find out, and I don't know how 100% accurate this is, but these friends would say that, like I mentioned earlier, Tommy was a bit obsessive, but they would also say he was kind of controlling and at times verbally abusive to Deanna. And I guess after Deanna was found, people had noticed that Tommy had scratches on his body, and they looked pretty fresh. A couple of months after Deanna's murder, Tommy would his mom took out a restraining order against him because he became kind of violent with her. Tommy would tell police that he had basically, I think, from what I understand, gone to his friend Jason's house, which is why he only walked her halfway home that night and why he didn't call that night. Police never found any evidence, then to link to Tommy being Deanna's killer. But, again, they just didn't have anything on Tommy, and so they kind of had to start looking elsewhere. There was also, I guess, a local firefighter who lived in the area who was like in his mid to late 30s. And according to some people, this guy knew Deanna and was kind of like creepily obsessed with her. So they kind of had him as a suspect. There was also apparently a person whose name hasn't been released, but I guess a kind of in and out of prison type person who was a known criminal was also considered a suspect. None of those three suspects had ever been arrested, ever. And none of them have ever been charged with anything. Shortly after the murder happened, police did release a composite drawing of a man who apparently was seen that night or the morning she was found in the same area where her body was found. When they released this composite drawing, they basically said, we're just interested in talking to this individual as he may have seen something or heard something. But apparently he was just seen in the area. They're not saying he was a suspect, and they're also not exactly stating who described this person, like how the description came to be. They haven't really announced that. So this composite drawing is that image, and police had just wanted to know at the time if anyone recognized him, because they just wanted to talk to him. But as far as I know, whoever was this description has never come forward, and I guess nothing really ever came from it. This person could be her killer as well. I mean, if this person was truly seen in that area where her body was found, the same time frame she would have been put there, or within a couple hours or whatever, he may be the person, or he may not be. He may be just someone completely random who has absolutely no knowledge of what happened, didn't see anything, hear anything. He could just be a random guy. But it's, if this is someone you do recognize by some random chance, I would definitely alert the police. If this person is you and you have nothing to hide, you should probably go forward to police to say basically what you may or may not know. Deanna Cremin's case goes cold very quickly, and it ends up just sort of lingering in the community for all of this time, with nobody having the answers as to what happened to her and why it happened to her and who did it. So I guess a couple of decades later, they tried to look into this case, and the DA who was in office at the time, apparently he found new information that there was apparently evidence that may have been withheld by the city's, the mayor's office, which ended up stalling the investigation because the police didn't have this information. And I guess this is information that actually points to a suspect, but not one of the three initial suspects, someone different that was well known to, I guess, that well known to the police or well known to the city's officials, linked to maybe a city official, a high-ranking person in the community. But even now, from what I understand, nobody knows who that person is. That name hasn't been released. It sounds like as recently as 2019, police kind of have an idea of who probably did this, but they need physical evidence to connect to that person. They need something. They need DNA, which I guess they didn't have. From what I understand, there wasn't any really physical evidence left behind that would allude to who the killer was. And I think they're hoping that with now modern technology, they can keep taking the evidence they had, like whatever clothing items they had or whatever they may have collected near her body, to maybe one day get DNA from. And nowadays you can take the tiniest amount of something, get DNA from it, build a profile, and link it to a person, or plug it into one of those ancestry type sites, or do the genealogical testing. But they don't have that yet. There was no witnesses to this murder or attack. Nobody heard screams, nobody heard an altercation, nobody saw or heard anything. And this kind of just happened in the shadows, in darkness, and there's no physical evidence. There's no witnesses. There's nothing. All you have is the 17-year-old girl who was brutally sexually assaulted and killed, left like she was trash, and her killer has just gone away like a whisper. They have erected billboards in the community, you know, asking for the public's help because police know that, you know, someone knows something. This type of thing doesn't happen and nobody knows what happened. You know, someone knows. At least one, obviously, at least one person knows. You really think about it, there are always two people who always know what happened, right? You have the victim who can't talk anymore, then you have their killer. So there's always one person out there who knows exactly what happened. And that person, typically killers, they like to talk, they like to run their mouths and yap and tell someone, usually in a drunken fit or they're high on drugs or something like that. They'll say something to someone, and that someone who has heard this, police believe exists. They believe that there is someone else out there other than the killer who knows, and they're just really wanting that person to come forward, because ultimately it sounds like this is going to rely very heavily on circumstantial type evidence and not physical evidence, unless with modern technology, you know, today they can pull something from the evidence to link to a person. You know, you had these suspects, but no evidence to link them. The most obvious one kind of seems like the boyfriend, Tommy, but sometimes it's too obvious. Is there someone who's connected to a high-ranking official, or at least connected to a high-ranking official back in 1995, that committed this murder that was being protected by said high-ranking official? It's not out of the question, certainly isn't unusual. I wouldn't put it past people to do that kind of thing, to protect a killer in order to protect their own image and their own role in the community. But we're talking about a 17-year-old child who was raped and strangled to death and left behind a building for two young children that she babysat to find. I mean, that's horrific. That's awful. Over 1,000 people attended Deanna's funeral service because, like I said, she was just that loved. The community rallied around the Cremin family, and it's just so kind of surreal to see how a community comes together for a person that's essentially a stranger to most of them. But it also goes to show the type of person that Deanna was and was probably going to become. Unfortunately, though, that's all I really have for this case. It is at a standstill. It is a cold case. They have never arrested anyone. They have never charged anyone. They have never announced officially an actual suspect or even really a person of interest. They have people that may know something. They have people who were the last people to see her, but that's it. She was just a block away from home, and someone stole her from the world. And somebody somewhere out there knows the truth about what happened that night on March 29th, 1995, to 17-year-old Deanna Cremin. And if that person is you, you can report to the police anonymously. You do not have to say who you are. You just have to say what you know. I believe the reward is up to around $70,000 now. Hey, money talks, right? If it's money you need in order to give this family some answers and some closure, then let the money do it for you. It should just be simple like, hey, I need to help this family, but hey, sometimes money needs to inspire people to talk. So if you have information about this case, please contact the Somerville Police Department at 617-625-1600. I believe you can also call 855-MA-SOLVE. 28 years ago, a 17-year-old girl was brutally murdered. Deanna Cremin was on her way to having a big, successful, happy life. She was going to work somehow, some way in the community, and she was going to help people. So do what she would have done and help her. Somebody needs to be her voice. Somebody needs to be her guardian angel. Please help Deanna Cremin and her family get the justice she rightfully deserves. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney Dooney, a Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe, give this video a like so more people can see it. The more people that see it, maybe the right person sees it, and maybe this case something can happen. You never know. Follow me over on TikTok, linked below. It's also linked up here at some point in the beginning and at the end of the video. And I sell merch and recommend a case to my email, which is listed below. I will add it to the list. Can't tell you when I'll cover it, but it'll happen some point. Jazz hands? I don't know why I did that. But that's it for this video. True crimer dingle dongs. And so, if you're seeing this, I am from the future. You're watching this in the future. I'm from the future. I need to tell you, I need to warn you, don't trust the bakeries, okay? Don't trust the bakeries. The Lisas are going to take over this country, and they're going to end everyone. Don't trust Wait a minute. I am actually from the past. You are from the future. I'm talking from the past. This doesn't make any sense. Don't trust the baby.